Multiple witnesses reported that Austin Metcalf told the suspect, Karmelo Anthony, that he would need to move out from under his team's tent, considering Anthony is a student at Centennial High School. But he was sitting under Memorial High School's tent. And after telling him this, Anthony opened his bag, reached inside and said, "Touch me and see what happens."
You open your feed and stop cold. Karmelo Anthony has officially turned himself in. After weeks of speculation, leaked footage, and growing public pressure, the teen at the center of a national controversy has surrendered to authorities. But it's what followed that truly stunned everyone. He admitted it wasn't self-defense. According to early reports, Karmelo's statement, given at the time of surrender, didn't include much detail, but it confirmed what many suspected after the now viral video emerged. The same footage that shows him confronting Austin Metcalf, moments before the fatal stabbing. And now, with his own admission on record, the entire narrative has shifted. This isn't just a legal case anymore. It's a cultural flashpoint. Black Lives Matter organizers, who had initially stood in support of Karmelo under the assumption of self-defense, are now distancing themselves, or worse, outright condemning his actions. Some chapters have released public statements calling the case a betrayal of principle, while others have quietly deleted posts that once called him a victim. The reaction online has been even more explosive. "He played us," one user tweeted. "BLM stood behind him, and now this? We marched, we raised money, and he knew it wasn't self-defense? And the donations? Questions are flying about where the money went, whether the GoFundMe organizers knew the truth, and if legal consequences could extend beyond Karmelo himself. You start to ask yourself, what happens when public trust is broken? Not by the system, but by the people you stood up for. How many movements have been shaken by one moment of dishonesty? And will this admission destroy more than just Karmelo's future? Because this isn't just about guilt, it's about betrayal. And the fallout is only beginning. Now that the confession is public, everything's unraveling fast. News anchors replay the footage on loop, this time with a different tone, no longer asking whether Karmelo was defending himself, but why he let that narrative take hold in the first place. And for those who rallied behind him, the emotional whiplash is real. You remember the rallies, the t-shirts, the hashtags, #JusticeForKarmelo, #FreeKarmelo. They weren't just trends. People poured time, energy, and money into defending someone they believed was unjustly accused. But with Karmelo now surrendering and admitting that he was never under threat, the narrative has flipped, and so has public support. BLM-affiliated groups in multiple cities have begun issuing damage control statements. Some leaders say they were misled, while others are publicly apologizing to the Metcalf family, something no one expected just days ago. "We believed we were standing up for a child caught in a broken system," one organizer wrote. "Instead, we stood behind a lie. And that lie, it's going to cost people. It's going to cost people." GoFundMe has reportedly frozen the original campaign tied to Karmelo's legal fund. Commenters are demanding refunds, asking whether the money helped him flee, pay for legal support, or was used for personal gain. And if it's proven that any part of the fundraiser was built on false pretenses, there could be consequences. You start to feel the weight of it. What does this do to the credibility of future causes? Will the next teen who's genuinely targeted be believed? And how many people who once fought for Karmelo will now walk away from activism altogether? Because this wasn't just a case of guilt or innocence anymore. It became a test of trust, and the entire movement just took a hit. Now the ripple effect is hitting even harder. And it's not just BLM chapters or donation platforms feeling the heat. Ordinary people who put their names, their voices, and their reputations behind Karmelo are being dragged into the fallout. Influencers who posted free Karmelo graphics are turning off their comments. Local activists who organized rallies are receiving threats. And the worst part? Many of them feel used. Because when Karmelo turned himself in and admitted it wasn't self-defense, he didn't just plead guilty. He undermined an entire grassroots effort. You see the shift happening in real time. Support pages are going dark. Memorial posts for Austin Metcalf, once overshadowed by outrage, are now re-emerging with comments like, "This is who we should have stood up for. He never got a chance to tell his side." And just like that, the victim narrative flips. Austin, once dismissed by many as the aggressor, is now being mourned as the teen whose life was lost senselessly, while his killer let the world believe it was self-defense, for weeks. And what about Karmelo's family? Their silence after the video leaked, their refusal to answer questions, their GoFundMe remaining live, all of it is now being re-examined. Some are asking whether they knew the truth from the beginning. Others believe they were just trying to protect their son. But the damage is done either way. You start to wonder, can a movement survive when one case makes it look dishonest? How many people will now question every future call for justice? And who's going to speak for families like the Metcalfs, who've been vilified while quietly grieving? because this case was never supposed to be a scandal. It was supposed to be about justice. But now, thanks to one confession, it feels more like a betrayal masked as a cause. Then come the headlines that no one saw coming: civil lawsuits. According to sources close to the Metcalf family, attorneys are now preparing to take legal action, not just against Karmelo, but potentially against his parents, his legal team, and even the fundraising organizers who they believe may have knowingly misled the public. Because now, with Karmelo's confession on record, the question isn't just why he lied, it's who helped him hold the lie together. Investigators are reportedly looking into how the original narrative of self-defense was allowed to gain traction so quickly. Some legal experts claim the family may have violated state fundraising laws if any part of the GoFundMe was launched under false pretenses. Others point to public statements made by Karmelo's mother, speeches that now ring hollow in hindsight, where she described her son as being attacked, cornered, and acting only out of fear. "We believed her," one community member says, "and now I feel like a fool." You feel that sentiment spreading. The press conference clips that once felt emotional now feel staged. The rallies that drew hundreds now feel misguided, because everything was built on a version of the truth that no longer holds up under scrutiny. And if that's the case, then this wasn't just a legal mistake, it was a manipulation of public trust. You ask yourself, if Karmelo's family knew the truth, why didn't they stop the donations? Will the donors be able to recover their money? Or were they just casualties of a broken system? And how many future victims will be denied support now because of this? Because the fallout isn't just legal, it's emotional, it's financial, and it's personal. And now, the very people who once defended Karmelo are the ones demanding answers. Now, the courtroom isn't the only place where things are heating up. The streets are reacting too. Outside the detention center where Karmelo is being held, a small group of protesters gathered, holding signs that now feel torn in tone. Some still read "Free Karmelo," while others have been crossed out or abandoned altogether. Because even among his own supporters, the fracture is undeniable. What started as a united front against what many believe to be an unjust system has now split down the middle, between those who feel betrayed and those who still insist there's more to the story. Some believe Karmelo was pressured into confessing, others argue he panicked and is now taking a plea to avoid trial. But for the majority of people watching, the focus isn't on conspiracy anymore, it's on accountability. And the Metcalf family? For the first time in weeks, their voices are starting to emerge. Sources close to them say they feel relieved, but not satisfied. Relieved that the truth finally came out, but not satisfied, because the damage has already been done. Their son is still gone. Their name was dragged through the mud, and for weeks, the world rallied behind the person who took their child away. "We begged people to look deeper," one of Austin's relatives allegedly said, but they chose to believe a version of the story that wasn't true. And that's what stings most: the selective outrage. The way public support can be bought by a good press conference, an emotional video, or a carefully worded fundraiser. Because once a narrative goes viral, the truth becomes harder to hear, until it explodes. You ask yourself, how did this happen so quickly? And why did so few ask questions? What if the video never leaked? Would the truth ever have come out? And how many more cases like this are hiding behind the same playbook? Because in the age of social media, the line between activism and manipulation is thin, and this case just exposed how dangerous that line can be. Local officials who once made vague statements of support for justice on all sides are now facing pressure to clarify exactly where they stood and whether they were influenced by the overwhelming early support for Karmelo. Some city council members, who were previously photographed attending Justice for Karmelo events, are now being called out online. And it's not just elected officials. Celebrity influencers and activist personalities who reposted support messages are quietly deleting tweets, scrubbing stories, and unfollowing the accounts they once tagged. Because what once looked like support for justice now risks being seen as support for a killer. But what people are starting to talk about the most? The speed, how fast this narrative took over, how quickly movements formed, hashtags spread, and people got behind something without waiting for the facts. And that's the uncomfortable part. This isn't just a scandal, it's a case study in how easily truth gets drowned out when emotions and algorithms take control. The court of public opinion moved faster than the legal system ever could. And now that the confession is out, people are asking, did we rush to judgment because of emotion? Or did we want a villain so badly in the system that we ignored signs that something didn't add up? You look back at the timeline, the footage, the fundraiser, the press conference, the silence, the confession, and you realize this case was never about one moment. It was about how quickly a narrative becomes fact once people decide what they want to believe. Because when the truth finally comes out, it doesn't just ruin reputations, it reshapes movements. And now, with Karmelo Anthony sitting behind bars and his confession echoing through every platform, the story reaches its quiet, devastating peak, not with a bang, but with disbelief. You feel the tone shift across social media. The outrage is still there, but it's been replaced by something deeper: regret. People are openly admitting they got it wrong. Commenters who once defended Karmelo are writing long threads apologizing to the Metcalf family. Some are even turning inward, asking how they let emotion override evidence. Because in this case, the truth wasn't hidden, it was ignored. And now, what's left? A family grieving, vindicated but still broken. A movement forced to reflect on how it responds and who it chooses to champion. A teenager, once the face of a cause, now the face of a cautionary tale. Karmelo's confession didn't just shift the case. It destroyed the illusion that every viral story is simple. It proved that justice can be complicated, that activism without patience can lead to destruction, that believing someone isn't wrong but believing without question, that's dangerous. And now, you ask yourself, what do we do next time? Will we slow down before choosing a side? Or will we keep letting headlines decide what's true before the facts even land? Because Karmelo's story didn't just end in a courtroom. It ended in a movement losing trust. And in the eyes of many, that damage may take far longer to repair than a single verdict